And I should mention, we are currently webcasting, and we will continue webcasting until that point, I believe, until the end of the Treasurer's report, at which time the webcasting will be turned off so we can do the election. The first part of the election is we have 2 board resolutions, and then we have the election for directors. And I want to let you know that one of the resolutions affects the way that the directors are sort of appointed and elected. And what we're doing is that resolution will go into effect for the next election. So for this election, the election of the directors will be operating under the current bylaws, and the next election will be operating under the revised bylaws, assuming that the resolution passes.
Sorry.
Ray,
quick,
yes.
Quick clarifying question. For the resolutions, is that just done by show of hands in the room?
With the card, you're given a blue card.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that one.
And,
okay.
and
Okay.
I assume that we have, for anyone who's not here, we have, I guess, proxy votes for the resolutions if you submitted a proxy form. Yeah, so the resolutions are via the card. The board members are via the list of candidates. The board member election is the last thing on the agenda today, and it is my understanding that that you will not know the results of the elections perhaps when you leave the room today. Those will be posted later. We're going to give ourselves time to, a little bit of time to run the election. We don't want people hanging around and hovering around. So I believe that covers everything. Yeah, Keith, you ready to start?
Okay, thanks, Dwayne. Thank you all for your patience with the chaos outside. We knew the hotel was having a wedding or 2. We didn't realize that they were having 4. Appreciate your being patient with that. The slightly curious thing is that, well, I have some documents up front here which are just basically hard copies of the 2016 financial statements, the minutes of last year's AGM, and the bylaws, just in case anybody needs to refer to them in paper form rather than online. The bylaws actually say that our annual general meeting date shall be on the 30th of September, unless there's notice of variation. So this is actually the first time that we've had the AGM on the appropriate date, as opposed to, and also in the state in which we have our legal entity trading. So that's quite fun. Is there anybody in the room who thinks they should have voting papers but doesn't? Okay. For the board election papers, if you didn't already fill them in, then there's no immediate hurry, but please fill them in. Once you fill them in, please give them to William at the back of the room. We're quite nice to have an independent somebody to assist William with the vote counting. Would anyone like to volunteer? Okay, excellent. Thank you, Warren. Can you note that in the minutes, please, Sue? Yeah, that's basically all the business stuff. So we'll try and get everything done by 6. My president's report, really just to tell you where we're at over the past year, a little bit more detail since the last workshop. I think that you're probably all very familiar with OARC's mission statement. I think the past day and a half have been an excellent embodiment of that, even without the extra key role excitement thrown in at the end. What have we managed to achieve this year? Well, we decided that for the 2017 budget, we were going to try and break even as opposed to the small deliberate loss we've made the last 2 years, and we're well on track for that. As a result of the retreat that we had in February, we've done a bunch of member surveys to engage and gather input from you. Thank you all. It's a lot of questions we've bombarded you with, but the answers have been meaningful, so we appreciate your response to that. Special ditto for the root key role. Well, we started that. We did the data gathering during the first change. We were all set up to do the data gathering during the second change. That's not going to happen next week, but when it does happen, we stand ready. We've had 2 nice pieces of funding for some custom software development, just finalizing an agreement with Verisign to do some RSSM extensions to DNSCAP. The drill tool, which I was really pleased to see we've featured in several talks over the past day and a half. Comcast have funded us for an additional major second phase of that. We did the regular DITL back in April, as big as ever. We've managed to finalize ownership of a couple of pieces of orphan software tool out there, DNSCAP and BracketQ. And that included, the BracketQ included a donation from IIS of money as well as the code, which is great. We physically relocated our offices again it's kind of just wandering across the Midwest, but I'll say a little bit more about that. And we're continuing to collate all the RSAC 002 data that the root operators publish, and we've got it from all of them now. Who are OARC's members? You are OARC's members. This is a membership organization. We're here to listen and to make a difference to your organizations as well as to the DNS environment and public benefit in general. So, please stay in touch. Please let us know what you think. We do listen and we do want to serve. We have some new members, doing quite nicely in terms of signing up new members. We've signed up another operator, the US Army, who operate HRoot. Our first internet exchange is a member, NinjaX in Arizona. The .il, CCTLD in Israel, I7RU in Grancy in Eastern Europe, Nick.at, another CCTLD member in Europe. We haven't quite got them all, but we're getting there. Shaw, the cable operator in Canada, and our newest member, A10, is very welcome. I just signed up at Silver. So the membership growth remains fairly steady. It's by no means exponential growth, but it's nice to see steady year-on-year growth. And you can see from the green that the green is about sustainable revenue growth. It's not just about signing up more members. We have a strict process for supporters to make sure that their participation in the organization is something that brings benefits back to OARC. We've managed to keep that proportionate as well. Governance, again, I hope you're all fairly familiar with this, but the AGM that we operate, it's governance meat governance vegetables when you'd much rather have technical meat. I firmly believe in these principles and making sure that the organization is transparent and diligent in its operation. Board has been through a couple of changes over the past year. Jack from Sierra, who is now treasurer, sends his apologies. This is not a week he's able to attend business meetings. Peter has taken over from Paul Eversman at Comcast. Liam was previously Dyn, it's now Oracle. George Apinik, who's the only board member here who's not actually being re-elected or reappointed or anything. Jaromir from CZNIC last week, he replaced Andre as Andre makes a career change, and Dwayne from VeriSign as our chair. Program committee, the program committee members could all please stand up. I think they all deserve a round of applause for an excellent workshop. Not just in putting the program together and whacking the program items into shape, but also all the sort of the scheduling and session chairing, which has worked really smoothly. So next year's program committee, the process is that every year the board reviews and reappoints the program committee on a calendar year basis, so that program committee can then work on the program for the spring and fall meetings. Some of our program committee members have reached their 3-year term limit, so there's a number of places we're sad to see them go, but also very grateful for their efforts that need to be replaced. And then we need the existing program committee members to say whether they're willing to continue serving. And we need new blood. So if you're interested in becoming a program committee member or would like to propose somebody for that, please speak to the board. Starting the process of selecting the program committee is on the board agenda for Tuesday, and that's something we'll have done by the end of the year. Who are the staff? OARC doesn't have any actual employees. Everyone's a contractor. The engineering staff, William and Jerry, are full-time. All the others are part-time to some extent and contractor time out to other similar activities. At the moment, it adds up to about 4 full-time employees. So, bear with us, it's not a lot. But we, it's a real pleasure to bring such an international team together and make things happen. So OARC needs a physical address. It used to be just down the road, just up the road here in Redwood City. We needed to move it last year. The easiest thing to do was to move it from where I was. Unfortunately, just having moved it to Ohio, my wife decided to get a job in Indiana. I've got better airport and broadband, so I'm better able to do this job than I was in Ohio. So it's been moved again. Moving after 11 years in one place and you're self-employed working from home is a real hassle. So I apologize for being a bit more distracted than usual over the summer. We're settling in nicely. It's interesting because there are some institutions in Indianapolis and Bloomington in Indiana which are actually quite focused on some of the things that OARC does, so I'm certainly going to reach out and see if there's some synergies there. Our new offices and co-working space is a former bowling alley, so that's fun. That's the address. That will be the formal address that's posted, but in terms of payments, our banking is still here in California, so there's a separate address in Belmont, California, where Pam, our accountant, is based, that the payment should still go to. Membership categories, again, I hope you're all familiar with these. One thing I did want to mention is that we created a new category this year, top tier of Diamond, which VeriSign has very generously signed up to. We'd love to have more than one Diamond member, so if you'd like to if you're interested in upgrading from where you are to anyone else, please talk to Sue. We'll be happy to help. We've been putting process in place to monitor that when the supporters commit, they commit to what they're going to contribute to the organization. And then there is the blue category. We try to make it clear that it's only for small organizations with less than 10 employees or less than 10 million revenue. But we quite often get some cheapskate large organizations trying to come in at blue level, and it's like, no, sorry, this is only to help small individuals, non-profit organizations, and quite often principal investigator teams in academic institutions. So back in February, we had a retreat, which VeriSign generously hosted in Reston, and we got the whole staff and board together for overlapping meetings. They weren't all in the whole room for the entire 3 days. And we reviewed where we are. The overall conclusion is that the strategy that we've been putting in place for the past 3 or 4 years has been generally successful, and we need to enhance that rather than mess around with it. Over the past couple of years, we ran 100,000 deficit as part of the previous strategy to achieve growth. I think you can see from the numbers it has been successful in achieving that growth. This year we want to target break even for the first time, and as I'll show you in the Treasurer's report later, we're well on track to that. The market is changing. We need to tweak the membership and workshop fees in order to adjust that, but we don't need to make any radical changes. We need to make sure that we continue to consult and engage members, which is why we've been surveying you more. Develop more structured methodology for workshop selection. That's still a challenge, but we're making headway there. Make more use of the board and officers, possibly in terms of working groups. We need to do further work in data privacy. Again, a little bit more to say about that in a minute. Operational security, that was very much seen as part of OARC's original role, but there are now so many other forums for operational security that we haven't really found a unique position there. So we're there to facilitate OPSEC activities, but we're not the watch room for the DNS or anything like that. And also figuring out, when you're running a non-profit, it can be difficult to prioritize sometimes. So we established some principles for prioritizing what we do. This slide is kind of preaching to the choir to show it to you, but I think that it's very helpful if you as members can keep these messages in mind so that when you're talking to other people in the industry and they're asking you, well, what about OARC? Why should I join? How do I justify to my hierarchy that this is actually not just a cool place to hang out with all the DNS gurus, but actually it will make a difference to our business. The other thing that we did from the survey is we gathered some quotes from some of you were kind enough in an unattributable way to fill in some quotations about testimonial, about how OARC works for you. So thank you. This is the best of them there, and we will certainly be using these in our messaging. So one of the surveys that we did was to try and get to grips with the tangled topic of data privacy, which in the age of post-Snowden cloud computing, GDPR, Brexit, and a whole bunch of other things that are flying around at the moment, it's not an easy topic. It's quite difficult to get a handle on. So we did our best to come up with a survey for it. Thank you for those of you who waded through the thicket of questions on that. And it kind of confirmed something that we suspected, was that there are reasons, the main reason that we don't get a number of organizations contributing towards their digital and DSC collections, and DSC in particular, is because of concerns about privacy. So we asked questions about possible solutions. One of the things that quite often gets challenged about OARC is, well, you have this thing about all the data always has to be on OARC servers, and therefore you're maintaining your own spinning bare metal, and shouldn't you all just stick it in some third-party cloud? Well, it seems that this model is important for about 2/3 of you. When it comes to data that isn't anonymized, it's actually 3/4 of you, but people are much less concerned about data that's been properly anonymized. And there's also a strong preference that data is anonymized either prior to or as part of the upload process. Some of you do that, some don't. We basically rely on our members to be compliant with the jurisdiction that they're in. And in general, as you might expect, people see anonymized data as more valuable, but anonymized data is still interesting, particularly where there's sufficient volumes of it that be crunched using big data techniques. We asked some questions about, well, what might help your warm, fuzzy feeling about the data privacy? And it's interesting because most of these questions came out 50-50. So about half of the respondents said, yeah, we'll hang on to the data, but you provide some way for other parties, other members to access it. Or there's this other thing that's been a little bit of discussion about this week, which is the idea of a closed user group, which is that you as a member can say, well, I want these members to have access to the data, but not all members. Again, about half saw that as a solution, and I think we'll be doing an experiment with that. And then there was less concerns about telemetry than there was about payload. I think a lot of people would be interested in uploading DSC or similar data to a cloud-based provider if that was cost-effective and done appropriately, as opposed to just putting that into OARC. Questions about country and jurisdiction considerations, and it was very. The only real trend we could see is that people don't like uploading data to other than the jurisdiction that they're in. There's no clear answers there, and it's not clear that geographically distributing the data set would necessarily help either. And we could provide more infrastructure for data sharing, but in general, the members are not prepared to pay for that. They would much rather see the data sharing continue on a best efforts part of OARC's mission. There's a number of things that came out of the surveys that we could do. Quite a lot of members thought that we should build an analysis cluster using Hadoop. At the moment, really the only way that we could do that is to take the existing analysis servers, which are fairly beefy 64K-ish machines, and there's about 4 of them. Would that be enough? Not clear. Do we actually want to go out and take up some donation offers for an entire rack of unused servers? Or do we need to spend money? We'd like feedback on that. Excuse me. Another thing that's been suggested is that it would be interesting to do a ditto collection of iron adder data. We've gathered that data occasionally as a side effect of other ditto collections in the past. Would it be worthwhile making a dedicated one? Do we want to make it a special effort, or do we just want to do that as part of the regular ditto effort? That would require support and participation from the 5 RIRs, who are clearly the main holders of that data. So if they're going to make that effort, then we clearly need to make sure it's worth it for them. Another thing that was brought home to me this week is that when we had smaller OARC meetings, there was a lot more discussion. As we've got bigger and it's been more and more about presentations from the top, the chance to actually have operational discussions has faded away. And that there's, another format of meeting that is valid is you get a smaller number of people in the room around the table to discuss particular operational topics. Maybe this is something that we could additionally do. Again, feedback on that would be really helpful. We came up with the idea of poster sessions or workshops. We'd still like to do that. There seems to be member support for that. It's just a case of figuring out the logistics. The workshops themselves, I think we've pretty much established a principle, and we validated this with more than one survey. 2 workshops a year, 1.5 to 2 days long, collocate with RIPE, NanoGuy, ETF, ICANN. It continues to get more and more of a challenge, takes longer to confirm dates. This is the biggest OARC meeting we've had. It's also the bloomin' most expensive because of this hotel and being in Silicon Valley and hotel costs for staff. And so we know how much money the collocation saves you, but we need to keep on top of this. Again, the site survey input was really helpful. Meeting sponsorship is extremely welcome. If you're interested in sponsoring a future meeting, please speak to Dinesh. Here's how the workshop attendance is going. The reason this is a jaggy line rather than a smooth one is we get different turnouts depending on what part of the world we're in. But this is, I'm pretty sure, our biggest ever. The last 2 biggest workshops we had were both in California, but they were both collocated with ICANN. So it's nice to see the attendance continue to grow, and so many new faces this time as well. Trying to figure out what to do with future workshops. In a year's time, it's all pretty much nailed down. OARC 29 will be with the RIPE meeting in Amsterdam at the Akura Hotel. We're doing something that we wanted to do for a while, which is to collocate with Center Tech. So that's all sorted. We were hoping to make more headway on the spring workshop by now. We thought that since we're in the US this time and we're in Europe in a year's time, it would be good to the LAC-REP regions. Possibly collocating with an ICANN meeting. I guess there's not going to be an ICANN meeting in San Juan next year. I've been hearing about some efforts to help people in Puerto Rico with network infrastructure, so that's something you can support. I think that would be great, but I don't think that we can put a conference there. We need to have some further discussions with ICANN about whether we collocate with the Panama meeting, or possibly London. As I say, we don't really want to be London and Amsterdam, Europe consecutively, but obviously it would be easy to do the ITF 10 meeting and the 101 meeting. I understand ICANN's planning its symposium there as well. So again, feedback for possible meetings in the LAC-REP regions or other suggestions that we'd have. We'd like these, and we'll try and get the things nailed down as quickly as possible, and certainly by the end of the year, so that you can plan and budget your travel. So, what we got planned for 2018, more work on software tool development. Jerry's been busy. Jerry's work plan is filled up with more stuff. We'd like to pilot a new type of data sharing for DNS statistics and telemetry. Related to that, we're going to try and implement some of the things that we found out from the data privacy, or at least use it to steer our strategy. As I say, some kind of upgrade to the analysis capability. We may consolidate the 2 sites that we have in Ottawa into a single Canadian secondary site, but we haven't quite figured out the budget or the timescales for that. We're still hoping to increase the contractor hours, try and get towards the point where most people are spending most of their time in OARC. And that's gradually increasing. We increase it as the recurring revenue stream from subscriptions increases. The strategic objective that the board set in February was that we should try and get 1 million revenue by 2019 and prepare for growth towards that. So that is basically my president's report. Happy to take any questions or indeed feedback on the points that I made now, or we can continue with the presentations. Any questions or comments? Okay, That was the governance vegetables, and I'll give you some technical meat. So who's going first, Jerry or William? Jerry?
Found it? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, it should be that one. So my name is Jerry, and I manage the software at DNS OARC. I think I met most of you yesterday. I'm going to talk about what I've been doing since OARC 26. And first thing I'm going to mention is that we have a new page up on our website that details all the projects we have and how we do funding development. And also some support information, mailing lists and all of that, and links to all the GitHub projects. And we also have now a section actually explaining our open source software licensing policy. So I guess I'm going to get an email from Andrew in a bit. So to some of the releases we've had, so for DSC, there's nothing really big going on, mostly just compatibility fixes and other bugs, small bugs. We had a submission from the GitHub user Mimuret. I don't know how to pronounce it in English, but it's like a small rodent or something. I don't actually know who it is, but he sent up 2 new filters to be used, so you can filter on surface only and 80-bit set only, and also added configuration options for setting the client mask that is used for the subnet data sets. So this was fixed to /24 before, so now you can set it to a /8 or 16 or whatever you want. And yeah, and for DNSCAP, the same type of compatibility issues has been fixed, since most of them are located in the helper libraries, as I call it. We also now have support for gzipping the PCAP output on the fly, thanks to Ray Bellis. And we have a new plugin that Wayne did for some measurement for the root KSK Rollover, I think. I don't know any details about that plugin, but. And for BracketQ, we took this project over after OARC 26. So a few weeks after that, I made the first release under OARC management. And also had to look at all the forks that people had made over the years with small fixes, and I pulled them back into the main repository and fixed a lot of stuff. I also added the tests, so that now we have some kind of regression testing going on as you build it. Then I can't remember who posted it, but someone said that the ICMP and eDNS parsing didn't work, so that had to be fixed. And then we added some new fields, so you can select on the IP version, and added support for parsing the, let's see, the client subnet, yeah, eDNS client subnet. And for Drool, we had more compatibility fixes, and thanks to Brian Carpenter for actually fuzzing it. It was quite nice. So I had to fix some stuff that he found, fuzzing Drool. And a lot of work in the recent time was going into the documentation to actually try and explain everything, and I had feedback from some users, and now it's looking a lot better, so we finally out of beta. So I'm expecting to release 1.00 in a few weeks. And then we'll start the normal release handling and function adding and stuff like that. So for packages, there's some changes because we're getting new distros, and also I managed to set up Copper for EPEL and Fedora, and then I'm still using the OpenSUSE build system for SLIS and OpenSUSE. So now we have packages for all these environments, and I managed to reach out to people that does FreeBSD and OpenBSD packages and get them to update some of the software. And so we don't manage that, but we link to the packages from this page. And in the summer, I released CheckMyDNS version 2. That's also been demoing in the back. So it's completely rewritten in Go. And one of the things I did in the last minute was actually pull out all the homegrown DNS authoritative code and just run real software in the background. So it's more or less proxying the DNS queries and then just messing around with the data going back out to the client if I need to. And we added 2 more tests, so for the DNS ID and the port number randomization based on DNS entropy and port test. And they are also based on an algorithm that Dwayne did a long time ago, I guess. Yeah. So some of the new stuff, as mentioned, the SSL Measurement Plugin. So this is work sponsored by VeriSign. So the main thing is to get the plugin up to date to the latest spec from the RSec 002 version 3. And get some scripts for merging, because there's so since you want DNSCAP to write the data kind of continuously, so you don't have to wait 1 day to actually get the dump. You want it to write continuously, and the RSec is per day, and then you need some kind of tools to just merge the statistics to get that information. So we're going to do that. But a lot of the work is actually going into the underlying libraries to reassemble IP fragments, for example, and try and do some kind of magic with the TCP session to actually be able to not have to see it at the start, because this is a problem now. I think most of the large resolvers have long ongoing connections to the authoritative servers, and if you stop your software and start again, it's not going to see that TCP session, and then it can't follow the queries. So a lot of work is going to go into that, and since that's going into the underlying libraries, that is also going to go into DAC and all the other software. A new thing is also a bad packets repository. That was a requirement from the RSSM project. And currently I'm using SCAPI to generate fragmented packets, but we can do a lot other stuff, or just add known where, well, maybe you just modify it manually and you add it to the repository. So more additions are welcome, and this can be used for testing software that does parsing PCAPs or network traffic and stuff like that. And Drool also going to get some more work done, but this is targeted for next year. And the big thing there is actually parsing and matching the responses. So that is going to be most of the work going into that. So we can actually have more statistics that the stuff coming back actually looks like the stuff I was sending, or the answer is more or less the same as found in the PCAP. And that's it. Questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Here comes William with all the voting papers. When you have written on your voting papers, William is the guy to give them to. but he's going to take a short break from being our voting teller to tell you about what he's been doing from a systems engineering point of view at OARC.
All right, thanks, Keith. I'm looking forward to doing this presentation because I was hoping to fall asleep during it, but I overlooked something. Here I am. So, this is really short. There's just a bunch of differences since the last presentation in Madrid. I poured myself something hot because it's cold here. So what's new? Well, not very much. We have 3 sites. Fremont's the main site where all the stuff and all the magic happens. Main uploads for DIDL, DSC, web server, mailing lists, that kind of thing are located. Composed of 3 networks: public network, 1 private network for out-of-band management, and a 3rd network, a special one, a 10 gig network. This is where all the NFS mounts happen for the file servers to communicate with the analysis servers. We move data back and forth between the file servers as they fill, or we need to relocate data. We have what's called a DR site. So that's our dormant site in case we have an outage in Fremont. We have another file server with all the data full and an analysis server on standby. Doesn't mean that you cannot use it. You can help yourself to it by all means. It's there. We also have in the secondary site SB, which is the system backup. That backs up all what we call the corporate data, so configuration data for systems, accounts, that kind of thing that's used internally to OARC. It excludes DIDL data and company. And we also have the secondary DNS up there. And finally, we have a site in Sweden, which is our secondary mail exchanger and also another DNS server, plus Jerry's development platform. File servers, nothing much has changed since the last presentation here, except we have some 25 new 8 terabyte disks that will be going into FS5. So you note it's currently a total capacity of 67 terabytes. This is going to go up to 134 tomorrow, which I know is a famous way of saying someday, but really tomorrow it's going to get upgraded. So FS5B, we have 2 24-slot shelves. The bottom shelf is getting upgraded from 2 terabyte disks to 8 terabyte. FS6 and FS1 copy everything that FS2 to 5 contain, except for some recent collections because the stuff is full. So we have half a petabyte of data, which is pretty cool, or total capacity, or 247 terabytes of data. So analysis and capture servers, there's nothing new here either. And 1 through 4 are uniform in OS. They're using Debian Linux now. All the FreeBSD is out. And we wanted uniformity because we have something special planned. Keith alluded to this before. I alluded to this before in Madrid as well. So I'll get to that. One interesting data point is since the collisions, there's not been as many researchers using the analysis servers. This is some concern, but it could be just in the academic cycle of life. Maybe it's just not hot property right now to do research on DNS. Capture servers. We've got 2 new ones to replace our 4 very old clunkers that are part of the DNS lab, actually. And those 4 capture servers actually consume 1 15-amp circuit. It's about 11 amps for 4 machines. This will get us down to 2 servers, pretty advanced, pretty beefed up, and just 2 amps. So this is a plus because that means we could grow it, or we can put something else, or elect not to. We have choice. So new data arrivals, our SAC 002, nothing new there. G is the new arrival. We've started mirroring that, although we've had some problems pulling from their website. It seems they do something a little special. Mauricio and I had talked about this about 4 or 6 months back, maybe, about looking for alternative ways to copy it down. Long-term AS112 queries, we're still doing this. One of the nodes is sending continuous capture data via DSC, as well as using the typical DIDL tools 24/7. It's just sending us a stream of data. We get some contributions from ICANN as well as Hivan from time to time. So this is pretty helpful and useful. One research question, how many NATed networks are there that are using these nodes? Interesting. In the past 12 months, not the past year, but 12 months, we've got data captures from the ZSK. Data 2017, this is a separate tree reserved for data that we capture beyond the scope of DIDL. Then there's DIDL 2017 and the recent KSK rollover we've got. So this slide is not different from Madrid, except that we had another prominent uploader send us their data. So we have 6.3 terabytes of clean data versus 9.8 terabytes raw, 16.1 total in volume, which is a record. The rest is not new in this slide, and this data is available on FS4. Wherever you see /MNT OARC-pool 4, pool 4 is an indicator of the name of the machine. Pool 4, FS4, pool 2, FS2, and so on. This is not a typo. We did a little bit of an audit across some of the data, and we found out that this particular data set was not properly processed. So in between all the other processing, I had some time to have FS4, which is our processing engine as well as upload spool, take on this data set and just process it. Because it was small, it was pretty quick to do. And that's available on pool 2, file server 2. You can reach that through any of the analysis servers. This graph is just a pretty graph showing you the volumes. It's not a time series, though. You got to be careful. If you read the axis at the bottom, it's just showing all the different collections and how big they are. You'll see org sign 2009 as a small collection, but that doesn't mean it was a DIDL collection necessarily, or the most recent. So you have to be careful how you read it. But the DIDL 2017 collection is that high peak right there. And this just serves as a guide to tell me how much space we're actually taking. So other news. We were expecting another collection for the KSK, but for obvious reasons, now we're not. At least not for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 4 to 6 months. The FS1 and FS6 servers, they're mirrors of all the other data, as I mentioned before. They're completely full. So one of the things we're considering doing is, instead of having 3 copies, or original plus 2 copies, we're going to have probably 1 copy. So FS1 might contain, let's say, the data trees. FS6 might contain the DIDL trees, and we'll complement them each other that way, but we'll still have 2 copies total. Original plus 1 copy is another way to look at it. System backups are, however, not affected, because again, the system backups take care of internal corporate stuff. Plenty of space there. KSK collection. So this is collection 1 that we called it, because we assumed there would be a second collection. I'm pretty sure there will be at some point in the future. Some root operators started 24 hours before the time and date chosen, which is okay. It's 4 days of collection versus some other ones, which are 3 days of collection. The processing is underway. A, C, F, H, J, and L are done. B is processing now with 4 others in the queue. I expect I will probably upload once they anonymize. I haven't heard from them, but that's typical. They usually lag about 4 weeks, and then suddenly I starts uploading. That is not an issue because the capture servers are always available, and the spool is, I think, about 28 terabytes free. So I's probably going to contribute maybe less than a terabyte there. Other notes, the zone file repository. Everybody remember that? Key constituent of that is the root zone archive. We still collect the root zones. I think it's twice daily, if I remember correctly. There's a graph following the slide here. TLDmon, yes, we're still running it, and we note that there's 1,544 TLDs as of September 22nd. We have an experimental instance of TLDmon running in Canada, which is monitoring extra TLDs for 2 reasons. One, we're curious about the other ones like .ARPA, and also because it's the canary in the coal mine. Is Nagios going to scale for the real TLDmon? So with the 200 extra zones that it's looking at, it's doing pretty good. It is scalable, so we can see some more coming through if necessary. And that's the root zone trend. And you'll note, one thing I didn't note in the previous presentation in Madrid is that there's a bit of a decline, which is the first time since probably, what, mid-2015, something like that. So there was a slowdown in the creation of TLDs, and probably some TLDs got canceled as a result. ODVR, oh yes. So ODVR is now doing 2 tasks: getting abused constantly, and DOS attacked and that kind of thing. The other duty it's holding is it's running a second unbound instance for the TLS DNS privacy stuff. That second instance simply takes input queries, forwards it to the first instance, and processes the request back. The reason why we did that is because we thought it would be more efficient to just have one ODVR, one TCP dump capture. We are capturing ODVR requests and queries and that kind of thing. Why run two for the same thing? So it was more efficient to do it that way. Researchers have access to the log files as well as to the PCAP captures. We're doing it all the time, 24/7. And you can find them on Pool 3 or FS3. That's where we have them. The logs are in another directory on the same file server, and all of this is reachable through the analysis servers. So what's for the future? This is largely unchanged, but as I said, FS1, FS6, one consideration we could do is buy another 108 terabyte disks and go for broke and just double the capacity of FS1 and 6. Another thing we could do is simply buy an empty chassis. We will not let those disks go to waste if we do replace them. On the other hand, if we do a complementary backup, we don't spend money either. Again, it's all about choice. Keith mentioned the eventual site consolidation in Canada. We have made an offer to some folks to run AS112 nodes on their behalf, simply because we're interested in more log data out of these nodes, just to see what's there. Indico, which we all know and love, that's going to get an upgrade probably within a year from now. There's a new version of Indico in the offing, but I kind of like to stay away from .0 versions, so I'll wait for 2.1. 2.0 is on the verge of being released if it hasn't been already. The one big change that they've done is the whole of Indico is actually a Python application, including the database. So the time scheduling and all that stuff, the accounts are all held in a Python-based SOAP DB. The authors have seen fit that this is a bad idea for the long term, especially because CERN is developing this software and they have thousands of conferences in their Indico, and I think they're starting to realize there's scaling issues. This is good for us because the database backend they've decided to choose is Postgres, and that's what we run too. So it's good to get this consolidation happening. Instead of running 3 separate DB engines, we are going to go down to 2. The second one is MySQL. By the way, and MySQL is being used by our CRM software. Analysis cluster. This is off the record. Hadoop is installed on each analysis server. Apache Spark is also installed on each analysis server. Apache Hive is also installed on each analysis server. On top of that, one of the analysis servers has Elasticsearch. The only issue with officially deploying these and declaring them open is how do I get multiple users to play nice? And there's also the issue of the metastore. How do I let users and enforce upon users a quota so they don't fill up the analysis servers? Or we do happen to have an upgrade for one of the file servers tomorrow happening. That's another option. So we'll see. Stay tuned for this. I haven't installed OpenMPI because I'm not entirely sure it lends itself. But maybe there's a couple of whiz kids out there in universities who know how to do this with HPC, and maybe they can find a way to research PCAPs this way. Portal refresh, the data catalog descriptions. We have directories on FS1, FS2, FS3. What is it? What's data 2016? So we need some catalog descriptions so you know what you're looking for, because we sometimes get these questions from newbie researchers saying, what's that? Or what's this? So it's a good idea, I think, to have a description of not just saying, we got diddle. What is it? So short descriptions are in the offing. I got to do that. Portal refresh, maybe just an interface refresh to make it easier to use. So it's really cosmetic stuff. And finally, I put this back from 2 years ago. I had taken it off because we had somebody come up to the mic saying, yeah, we should be doing some kind of test bed kind of thing. And well, there is the DNS lab. It's exactly built for that. But it's old. And running 16 machines on $4,000 a month of electricity just to sit there makes me nervous. I dream of animation tracing engines if you guys don't use it. So I could use it for ray tracing if you don't. Thank you very much for your contribution, but I still think that's a bad idea. So I really think we should retire that machinery. It's about 11 years old. DL140s, I think, Hewlett Packards. I put this in at the last minute. because something grabbed my attention 2 weeks ago. So we have a couple of new nodes. D6 is deploying for AS112, which is fabulous. We've had some other ones come in over the summer. There is one global node on the high performance research networks. This one is connected in Ottawa to the Canary network, which is kind of the equivalent of an Internet 2 or RNet in Australia or Géant in Europe. Interesting thing is we continue seeing a lot of traffic from the rest of the world. And that's bizarre. And it's typical, though. The high-performance research networks usually say, well, root servers, DNS, that's commodity. We don't want that. So, and then they go on to claim that there's no asymmetry on any high-performance research network. None whatsoever. It's the best. The very best. Well, no. I have the data to show that it leaks a lot, and I know where it leaks. So there's skeletons in those closets. And really, this is a conversation I should be having at a Torrena networking conference or an Internet 2 joint techs, something like that. They got to clean up. I don't understand why the University of Kansas sends me almost 100,000 queries a week to this one particular node in Canada. Then again, I don't know why the Emirates does either, or Argentina, or Chile, or Uruguay, or Paraguay, or Japan. I'm very surprised, Japan. Their high-performance network doesn't have an AS112 server. And that's because high-performance networks don't peer with commodity internet exchanges. Oh, internet. We wouldn't want to do that. So one thing I do want to home in on, and this is what caught my attention 2 weeks ago, there is a draft where they, for example, is the language they used, it's the exact phrase, they want to delegate home.arpa at the black holes. I had a discussion with the IANA about this, and they mentioned, DNAME, and I mentioned DNAME, and I said, no, there's this thing called DNAME. And they said, no. And then I had some informal discussions with a couple of root ops and said, well, how likely is it to shove a DNAME into the root zone? And they said, 2 years, committees, studies, maybe not. So I said, okay, well, we'll just socialize it on the mailing list for S112 ops and hope for the best, but give us time before you do the delegation. And it seems that that's going to be the easy way out of this. So, yeah, interesting. And just for the heck of it, in about 43 minutes, I put together a DNS live map. I don't know if I can run it on this laptop or not, or if we have time, but it's probably stuck here somewhere. So I'll do this really quickly. I don't know if Prav does operating or not, but maybe it is or maybe it isn't. Go. How do you grow this thing up? Okay. So I put this together, and this is gobbledygook, I know, but this is the more cool thing. And, ta-da. Oh look, Argentina, Japan. I don't know if you can see that very well. I'll see if I can zoom in. The tool chain of this, oh, there's the Emirates. The tool chain is a piece of software called Stash 53, which is capturing from the interface, which pipes its output to Redis, which then transforms the Redis output into Logstash, which then I aim Elasticsearch at, and then I stick Kibana on this, and then I fiddled with creating sources. What is this? I did discover, visualize, and dashboard, and ended up with that thing. So this is really cool because I now can prove empirically to researchers who would have to stand up to at Torrena and say, yeah, you're leaking traffic to my server in Canada, but fill your boots. You should fix this. Why is Argentina? Argentina has a high-performance research network. So just to re-emphasize, this is not the internet. This is high-performance research networks that are hitting a node in Canada. They have AS112 servers in Argentina. So there's bad peering happening, or that's deliberately bad because of a routing policy. We don't peer with internet exchange points, or the internet one. So, okay, send it up. So what's interesting about this is every time I change the times, I can, this is real time, by the way. Now that I just brought this up, this is what's happened probably in the last 24 hours. I can change it to the last 5 minutes. But it changes, it's not consistent. Some countries all of a sudden show up and start sending me queries. At other times, it changes. So I don't know if that's because I'm overloading the shards. Bottom line, DSC is a lot more elegant at dealing with this kind of data than this tool chain, because Elasticsearch creates these enormous shards that fill up the disk, and about once every 2 weeks I gotta go stop, blow it all away, and start it again. With DSC, it's more efficient. And I kind of wish DSC had an output filter. I'm getting off topic. I wish DSC had a kind of like an option for me to send what it pulls from the interface. Instead of writing to XML or YAML, I wish I could send it out to like the network, to a socket, and send it out to Graphite, or send it out to Ganglia, because then I can use different interfaces to graph the same thing more efficiently or inefficiently. Again, it's about choice. And actually, speak of the devil, I don't know if I can bring this. How much time do I have? Plenty of time? All night? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Let's keep going. I have a captive audience here, but I don't know if I can bring it up anyways. So I think I can bring it up. It works. No kidding. So I'll give you guys an example of what I've been up to here. So, Ganglia is basically a it's a monitoring system to monitor high-performance computing clusters. Remember I mentioned Hadoop. So if you look at this, we have almost a terabyte of RAM. Wow, that's a pretty impressive thing. We have 218 CPUs across 16 hosts, potentially. Wow, that's pretty cool. We can drill down, choose a source, DNS OARC, sure. Let's pick that. And then you have like a Gartner magic quadrant. I never thought I would have mentioned Gartner in the DNS OARC meeting. Anyways, so you have this quadrant here that tells you the server loads, and it's pretty nifty, and you can get how much traffic is going across the wire as a summary of all of the network. You can get a summary of the loads across the CPUs. You can then drill down and choose a node to see which one's misbehaving or which one's happy or which one's sad. Yeah, you can see it on there. So there you can see there's one host that's really, really busy, and you get to wonder, well, what is that? Is that something special? Is that something ordinary? And you see it's just daemon, and nothing to see there. One thing I also added that I don't have a link to here is if you don't like this interface because it looks old tech, the cool thing about Ganglia is that you can instruct it to send, and this is my suggestion, this is where the suggestion for DSC emitting to a network socket came from, instead of writing to disk. You can tell Ganglia, don't use the Ganglia web component, send it to Graphite. So I have a Grafana instance of the same stuff here. What it's doing is Ganglia is not just sending to here, it's also sending at the same time with very minimal difference in load to InfluxDB. And then I put Grafana on top of that, and now I can create dashboards out of that. So there you have it. Any questions?
I think there was a small amount of discussion about this a while back, about the possibility of accepting digital data in the CDNS format. What's the current thinking on that?
I'll have to ask Jerry to answer that question, because we had this discussion, and Jerry is more in tune with what's going on with CDNS, I think, than I am. No, you're not? I don't think we've done anything with it, because when I talked to you about it, you were going to look at it, but I don't think it's gone forward. Okay. Yeah, so it depends on the tool chain.
Because I think there was initially concern that there wasn't an open source tool to convert it back to a PCAP, but that exists now, so maybe it's something you could consider again. Yeah,
I think it's something that maybe we'll look at. I know that we've had discussions about this before, and then the discussion trailed off. But Keith, do you have anything to add to that?
Sorry, you were asking about CBOR format?
Yes, CDNS.
Yeah. Well, what happened was that there was the whole nominate patent thing, at which point we got kind of cold feet, and this is my entire engineering resources. These two guys, so they had things that were less likely to get us sued by nominate lawyers to do. So we thought we would back off and see how that evolved. And then a few months ago, it looked as though that was going to be less of an issue. And I hear that this week Nominet got the stupid patent granted.
Yeah, it was granted a few weeks ago.
So it's not that we don't want to do that stuff, it's just that there's lots of other stuff to do, and we're, but yeah, it would be nice to be able to accept both formats, you know, PCAP and CBOR, and certainly Jerry's done some interesting work in streaming CBOR formats as well. We'll, you know, we'll keep it in mind, and we'll just try and see what happens with the patent situation to get some clarity.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
And off the record, I'd like to apologise for having my name on that patent. I didn't want to do it. I had to.
Okay, we're running slightly ahead. Any other questions for William or on OARC engineering in general?
And that's actually the first time I've known that I haven't signed it. I didn't tell them.
We've all done it. We've all got. I've certainly got a pretty dumb patent application in my history. So yeah. Okay. So thank you, William.
And a reminder, anybody have outstanding ballots, see me? Thanks.
So just one more slide deck to sit through. Since I'm doing the Treasurer Secretary thing, I'll put my glasses on and then you'll trust me more. Yeah, so really this is just an overview of where we are financially. The 2016 accounts were audited just before the last workshop, so we did actually have a draft copy of these at the last workshop. There's a copy available there, and in general the accountants found less issues this year than they have in any previous year. We finished last year with the deficit around the 100K planned level. That was intentional to grow the organization. This year we're targeting break-even. We're pretty much on track for that, modulo some fluctuations. The numbers I'm about to show you, the year to date is January through August. We haven't quite got the September figures yet, so that's 2/3 of the year rather than 3/4. One nice thing is that our cash reserves are the strongest ever. They're around 370K, so that's a good position to be in. So basically you'll see that income is pretty much on track. Expenses are slightly below what we expected to spend at this point in the year, and the cash reserves are higher. And we've also managed to increase Dinesh's hours above budget since the last workshop as well, which has been a good thing to do. Where's our money coming from? As usual, most of our income comes from our member fees. We haven't received any donations lately, although there have been some contributions for software development. We're doing reasonably well in terms of covering the workshop costs. It looks like we're behind budget there, but that was before we got the additional sponsorship from ICANN for this workshop, so that's quite good. We're also finding that we're getting quite a good proportion of our workshop costs from registration fees from non-members and late registrations now. Project funding, again, the situation is actually better because this is basically the cash position. It doesn't reflect the fact that we are about to secure the VeriSign funding for the RSSM, and it doesn't reflect the Comcast Drill 2 funding. Once we've added these in, we will be well ahead for the year in terms of our project funding target. One of the things I'll be doing with the new board is a final quarter budget revision to see what we can do in terms of contractor hours between now and the end of the year, whether we stick to the plan or whether we can do a little extra. Expenditure survey, well, guess what? Most of our money that we spend is on consultants, professional, i.e. the contractors, and also things like the auditors and some legal advice. Capital equipment, that wasn't too high this year. Again, some of the underspend there is the big box of disks that we just bought. So again, we're pretty much on track with capital equipment. It's a much lower proportion of what we spend than it used to be because a lot of the big data stuff that we do now is very generic hardware. It doesn't need to be special purpose hardware. Workshops, we spent a lot less on workshops than we expected this year for the spring because ICANN basically completely hosted us. On the other hand, this has been quite an expensive venue, so I think we'll probably come out in the wash there. There's also travel factored in as well. And then other things, it's things like the office space that we have and various admin costs. And then the co-location is mostly to Hurricane Electric, just up the road in Fremont, and also a little bit to Otix for the Canadian side. As I mentioned at the 2017 retreat, the board set us a couple of financial targets, which is that it would be nice to get from our current $750,000 revenue up to $1 million revenue by 2019, not because we value the money, but because of what the money lets us do. And it's also a good principle of nonprofits to have some cash reserves for operation in the absence of revenue. Basically the target for 2020 is that we have reserves of a year. These are potentially stretch goals. We'll see how the economy goes over the next couple of years, but we've certainly managed organic growth along these lines over the past few years, so they seem achievable. And that's basically it as far as the finances are concerned. Does anyone have any questions on the 2016 accounts or in general the OARC's financial position? Okay, fine, room full of engineers, you don't care. No, no, that's fine. I mean, I'm happy to talk to any of you offline, and likewise, it's been good to get Jack on the board because he's been adding some financial insights and some of the things that me as an engineer pretending to do financial stuff can benefit from. Okay, at this point, we are going to shut the webcast down because that's all the presentations done, and it's now resolutions and votings and such like. We're running slightly ahead, so if everyone can be back in the room in 5 minutes, we could take a comfort break, or we could just plow on and try and finish early. Okay, keep going. Okay, let's keep going then. Okay.